nerds, what's up? Today we're going to talk about some good slow burn fantasy. See you after the jump. So there are a lot of epic fantasies out there that are considered slow burn, but usually saying it's slow burn is just a fancy way of saying
you're boring.
But I want to talk today about 3 slow burn fantasies that I actually read and really enjoyed, and the slowness and the scale of them is actually what made them good in the end. Now let's be clear, just because a book is long does not make it slow burn. Think of a Sanderson novel. Sanderson novels are very beefy, but they are very fast-paced. It is plot, 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 plot. I'm talking about books that have a lot more dips and take a little bit longer to get into, but that were so worth it into the end. So let's get into it. Number 1, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This book is very long and it's sometimes a little slow, but it is so satisfying in the end. This book really hits this unique spot for me where it's definitely fantasy, it's not magical realism, but the way that the author blends together historical fact and historical figures and history into the novel makes this feel like, yes, if magic returned to our world, this is what it would look like. It's just so seamlessly done. It really feels like it takes politics and wars and those sorts of things and makes it make sense for our world as it was in the time period this takes place. And it feels real. And I'll be honest, some of those historical bits get a little boring for me. They get a little long and a little slow. But what I realized is at the end, that is what made her world feel so complete. It was almost like we were reading a history of magic in London and how it developed, which I actually think is the point of the novel. But because there were those slow parts and the scope is so broad, by the end of it, you really get that sense of accomplishment and the sense of really knowing the 2 main characters and the relationship that ebbs and flows between Jonathan and Mr. Norrell is so much more satisfying because of how many years we get to see them go through. It's really satisfying how we get to see that ending and we've earned it because we've seen everything else through it. And when I got to the end, I thought, this book wouldn't be as good without those slightly slow parts. I personally know several people who tried this book and put it down and stopped. And I really encourage you to try and push through it because you will see the purpose of those in the end. It isn't just a spot that a good editor could have taken out. You really need them. So I really encourage you to read this novel. It's extremely unique and I really enjoyed it. Number 2, The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. The thing this book succeeds at is handling complex motivations without becoming burdensome. I was a little wary to start this book because I heard it had a lot of war scenes and political intrigue, which for me can sometimes slow a book down quite a bit. But Liu is just masterful at making it interesting. It's not necessarily like the fastest page turner, but every moment felt important and it kept my attention. And even some of my favorite authors like Sanderson often lose me in long extended war scenes. I get bored during battles. Liu didn't lose me. He kept me the entire time he was writing it, even if it wasn't necessarily a page turner. Liu is an excellent writer, and I think he had an excellent narrator, because the way the story jumps from character to character and weaves a complex narrative that puzzle pieces together in the end is so excellent and so satisfying. Again, it's really a book that even though there's maybe slower parts to it, by the time you get to the end, you think, I needed every single one of those parts to understand this full story. Liu was also masterful at his characters. It's interesting because it's not the kind of book where you're like deep in the trenches with the characters, yet you still feel so deeply connected to their storylines and how they intertwine. For example, Kuni and Mata's coming together and then eventual demise I found so fascinating. There were so many characters that I loved seeing their stories. And even though it was long and a little slow, I needed those moments with the characters to feel the way I did feel at the end. I think The Grace of Teens is really a perfect example of a slow burn novel. It's slower, it's not necessarily a huge page turner, but you are kept captivated the entire time through it, and it's extremely satisfying at the end. Also, it's Asian-inspired fantasy, and we just don't get enough of that. Finally, number 3, A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula LeGuin. So this might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. I actually get really surprised when I find out that people feel like A Wizard of Earthsea is YA. I don't feel that way at all personally. I did feel The Tombs of Atuan, which was the second book in the series, did start feeling more YA, and I haven't read the 3rd book yet. It's on my shelf, I just haven't got around to it, so I don't know if that feels YA as well. But A Wizard of Earthsea kind of felt like a slow burn to me. It's not very long like the other ones, but it didn't feel like the typical fantasy story to me. It didn't focus on plot, 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 plot. after we see the main character kind of get into his predicament, it's really kind of this long journey that he takes that's also very psychological and very internal struggle in nature. And I just really enjoyed it. It was so different than what I expected, and I feel like LeGuin's handling of the main character's struggles is so different than what I normally see in fantasy. But I have to admit, it wasn't a book that was necessarily a page turner to me. I didn't feel like, oh, I have to get to the next page. Instead, it was more of a quiet enjoyment. It was something that kind of made me explore myself and my own feelings and the character itself. It's obviously an excellent book. It really made me realize why LeGuin is considered such a genius. But it was a little bit of a slow burn to me, but completely worth it, obviously. Okay, so those are 3 slow burn fantasies that I really enjoy. Drop down in the comments below and tell me if you've read any of these books and how you felt about them, if you gave up on them or you really enjoyed them like I did. And also let me know if there's any other good slow burn books that I should read. It's kind of interesting because I've definitely read my share of boring books, but these 3 really came through in the end, unlike a lot of books that I've read. So let me know what you think. And as always, if you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.